Hi. So the first thing I always do is gather references. I always use Pinterest because when you click on an image, it recommends similar results to that certain image. But feel free to use whatever apps you like. I tried using Xiaohongshu, which is like the Chinese version, but I ended up getting distracted 90% of the time, so Pinterest it is. Now obviously, you should always pick references that you like, pictures that resonate with you, so you will have fun when doing the study. However, here's some things I pay attention to, especially for anatomy and muscles. First, determine what part you want to study. Do you want to study the full body anatomy, or is it only certain parts of the body? Second, you have to know how familiar you are with the subject. For example, I want to do half body muscle anatomy study. Boy, that's a lot of words. But my knowledge about the subject is So I need the muscles divided like this to see the shapes easily. I also need to learn how to simplify the shapes and shadows of the muscles. The best way to do that is by studying other people's art. My go-to artist for muscles is of course Rinotuna. I love their rendering. It doesn't look overcomplicated, but still looks semi-realistic. Recently, I also found this drawing by Rou. They're one of my favorite artists in Xiaohongshu. Obviously, I also admire their rendering, but look at the third image. I mean, god damn! You try to touch those titties, they'll bite your hands back. So now I have 3 types of references: photographs, anatomical, and other artist rendition. Now I know what you're thinking. Fong, what is this disgusting cluttered abomination of a board? Okay, that's hurtful, but you're right. It is a disgusting cluttered abomination of a board. I've been drawing like this for years, and I think the clutter is starting to deteriorate the nerves in my brain. Not anymore, because now I have Milanote. Milanote is an app to organize your ideas, your references, your mood boards, or what have you into a visual board. It helps you to stay organized in planning your creative process, such as brainstorming and reference gathering. I'm using Milanote for today's study to help me organize my references. I'm really impulsive with references, grabbing anything that catches my eye, and in the end, I got overwhelmed by my own reference board because it's so cluttered. Organizing references in Milanote is so easy. They have a lot of templates you can browse through to see which one suits your needs. I really appreciate that it gives you examples on each template so you know how to use them. So inside my main board, I have 3 subboards: real people for photo references, anatomical, and drawings from other artists to see how they simplify muscles, and also the characters I'll be drawing for this video. The comments are just for fun. If I want to add another subboard, I can just drag this to my board and rename it. You can also add another subboard inside your subboard, and another subboard in your subboards. Boy, that's a lot of subboards. You can add anything to your project board. I like to add notes on things to focus on during my study and my observations from the references, such as shading style and what colors to use. You can use text, but I prefer drawing directly on my board to add these notes because it's more freeing. I also like to add Pinterest links so I can access related images with one click if I need more inspiration. So I don't need to fire up Google or open different apps just to look for additional references. Milanote can also help you to find your inspiration. Just click on the add image, type in your keywords, and drag the image you'd like to add. I've only used Milanote for a while, but it has made my drawing process more organized and much less cluttered, especially when organizing my references. I'm using the web version, but you can download the app on Windows and iOS. So check out Milanote, sign up for free using the link in the description. Your brain will thank you. Thank you so much Milanote for sponsoring this video. I always start with a silhouette, especially when drawing poses. This is to get the big picture of the pose and to have a base for my sketch. Also, there is nothing more terrifying than a blank white void of a canvas. Speaking of poses, I think it's best for the limbs not to overlap. Let me give you an example of bad versus good silhouettes. You can pause if you want to. Silhouettes are especially important in character design because viewers should be able to understand what the character is doing and even their personality just from the silhouette. Granted, you cannot expect to find perfect references where the limbs don't overlap at all. This reference's arm and neck is overlapping, but I don't think it's ruining the whole pose and silhouette. Your silhouette doesn't have to be perfect or detailed. This is just the general idea of what you're about to draw. I'm planning to do a back muscle study as well, but it looks very complicated, so I'm not promising anything. Many artists say that limbs should be drawn as ovals or curved because they contain muscles and fat. While I agree to that, to some extent, it also depends on the pose and perspective. This person has bulging muscles, but this arm looks straight because of his pose. Muscles stretch. They don't look round and curvy all the time. And it's much simpler to draw straight lines first for the pose, especially if the torso is bent like this. I break down the torso into 3: chest, ribs, and lower abs. Don't forget to make it look 3-dimensional. I draw little circles to indicate the joints. Since his left elbow is pointing forward, I need an indication that it's bent. I will also highlight the muscles that I tend to overlook, especially the back muscles around the armpits and the triceps. Use the anatomical reference for this. Having anatomical references is great to see the muscle lines, which are not very visible from the photo reference. I always pick where the muscles are given different colors, so you'll know how they're separated. Now we're moving on to drawing the cleaner sketch. I have collected some of my favorite sketching styles from Pinterest. It's rough and messy and very aesthetic. To get that look, I'm going to use flat watercolor opaque brush, which I usually use for rendering. You can see the lines clearer than in a photograph. I like to draw the lines not too curved, not too angular, so somewhere in between. I also draw 2 lines to draw the muscle ripple, something like this, for example. This simplification is not something that I came up on the spot, by the way. I analyzed this artist style and determine whether their method works for me. I have my own art style as a foundation, so I can easily see what works and what doesn't, even when drawing different poses. But if you don't have a style yet, you can copy directly from artists you like to understand their creative process better. Now that I know what works for my style, I can draw without looking at other sketches as reference. These are what works for me. First, draw ovals only on the shoulders and bulging muscles. Second, draw 2 lines for the muscle ripple for volume. 3, draw angular or sharp edges for relaxed muscles, as well as smaller ones like triceps and forearms. It is essential to talk about the abs in muscle studies. Let's look at our anatomical board. Below the chest, there's a gap before reaching the six-pack. So this gap is supposed to contain the very top 2 packs, followed by the next 4, and then the last 2 lower abs if you have an 8-pack. To draw abs, I draw the rib cage first, followed by a line in the middle, and then the packs. I draw 2 packs at a time, and then I draw the sides to sort of cage the abs. Because of the pose, the abs are facing upward. I will not be drawing the lower abs since the shadow is very faint. I will just paint it during the rendering. So we have the sketch of 3 men who I think are quite muscular in Genshin. Risley is self-explanatory. Same goes for Al-Haytham, even though I'm kinda confused because all he does is read and debate his roommate. Diluc is muscular in my head canon because he literally manhandles a huge ass sword like it's a butter knife. He must be hiding those gains. I have prepared some rendering references, mostly from Rinotuna and one from Rou. Some of Rinotuna's works use a shading style that is a mix of cell shading and realism. I call it boxy shading because it looks like a box. I don't know, I'm stupid. Rou's work is similar, but more painty and stylized. After applying the soft shadows, I'm going to apply the hard shadow using the same brush I use for sketching. I'm just mapping out the shadows real quick without incorporating Rinotuna or Rou style. But with the chest shading, it's gonna look like a bra. I'm 12. To achieve Rinotuna's look, I'm going to set a higher opacity for the brush. Not 100% though, because I still want to create the midtones. So set the brush to around 60 to 70% opacity. I'm adding the basic shadow shapes without any details. Pay attention to where the darkest shadows are, like on the lower part of the shoulder, elbow, and where the arms bend. This will help define the shapes of the muscle. To add dimension and volume, we have to create midtones. In this lighting, midtones are often missed because the dark shadows are very prominent. Plus, it's harder to notice the midtones in a colored photograph. You guys, if my voice sounds weird, it's because during the recording, I got sick. So, we will turn this picture into black and white. And now, we will use the eyedropper tool to see the different values in the shadows. Now, I want you guys to pay attention to the color wheel right here. Hold on, that's a rectangle. Doesn't matter. If you look at the dark shadows, they're pretty similar in values. Like look at the grays, it doesn't move that much. But when you pick the color in the middle, it goes up quite a bit. That means we should apply lighter shade in this area as the midtone. If you compare the middle of the bicep and the lighter area next to it, they have different values as well. And this is what a lot of artists, especially beginners, tend to miss. Doing black and white painting as a study is a great way to learn values and midtones, which adds realism to your painting. I will finish this painting as a whole, which means not focusing on one spot only, even though I already spent too much time on Diluc's one arm. I want to learn to paint quicker, because not only does it save time, but it also helps you to see the big picture and not stress over the details. By the way, I'm not going to put any effort on the face. We're all about the body in this video. Have you guys heard the term shrimp boyfriend? It's a slang in China, 下戏男友. Basically, it's to describe a man who has average face but an extremely desirable body, because when we eat a shrimp, we usually ignore the head. Same thing applies to today's video. But Fong, I eat the shrimp's head! Why? Let's move on to the torso and thank freaking God to whoever invented skin tight shirt. First of all, it's muy caliente. Second of all, it's easier to paint because there are very few folds and creases. As with anything, paint the big shadows first. Just like the muscles, remember the midtones. Not all shadows are equally dark. I will refer to Rinotuna's art for the small creases, but I will not be adding as many since my shirt is tighter. I will just add a few around areas where the shirt is stretched, mostly around the chest and sides of the body. Rinotuna has two types of work, the sketchy style and the smooth, full rendered one. Personally, I prefer the sketchy one, because you can see the brush strokes and the line work. It's full of textures, and you know I'm all about textures. They also add line art to the sketchy style, which gives it a more stylized look. I love adding line art after rendering because it makes the painting more defined and adds details without much effort. We'll do one more painting with Risley. Oh, and I don't think I'll be able to cover Al-Haytham's back muscle in this video because it's too complicated, and I don't think I can yap that long with my runny nose. But as always, we have to map out the hard shadows on top of the soft ones. Focus on the big shapes first. Again, I'm using 60 to 70% brush opacity to get the midtones. You don't have to use flat watercolor opaque like I do, but try using brushes that have faded tips so you can get the midtones easily. For this painting, I'm taking color inspiration from Rou. Their color choices are very unique. They're using purple as the shadows. This really contrasts the warmer base color of the skin and looks very stylized. I will adjust the colors later because I'm more comfortable painting in muted colors first. So for now, I will try to combine Rou's painting style with Rinotuna's bold, boxy shading. I'll remove his nips and belly button for now because these details are quite distracting. Remind me to add them later. If you look at the photo reference, the shadow looks pretty soft, but I like to use Rinotuna's approach of using boxy, angular shapes to simplify these shadows. I think these harsh-looking shadows combined with midtones looks more realistic than overly smooth ones. I added shadows to the bottom right of the abs because of the lighting, using triangular shapes. Due to the lighting and pose, the middle of the abs would have the darkest shadow. The left side might seem very light, but there's actually faint shadows there. Again, turn the picture black and white if you cannot see it. To get Rou's painting style, avoid using smudge tool too much. It will take away the textures away from your painting. Use lower opacity brush if you'd like a smoother dark to light transition. I love how Rinotuna's work has a realistic body, but a stylized, almost cartoonish face. Rou's work also has the same feel, but much more stylized. I also want to try that for this video, but I think it's better if you have the shrimp boyfriend mindset. Look, both Risley and Diluc are very attractive characters, but my execution for today is just like my health condition right now. I will add darker shadows using multiply to get the bold shadows like Rinotuna's work. Just use an airbrush for this. Afterwards, I will add the line art. The lines don't have to be perfect. Rough and loose line art has its own charm, so don't be too stressed about it. I will also add rim lights. just a little bit, so it looks more stylized. I will also color the darkest part of the shadow with purple, like Rou, but to be honest with you, it didn't go exactly as I planned. I don't think my base color matches with the purple shades, but still, using purple adds a cooler tone and contrasts nicely with the warmer hue of the skin. Alright, I think it's time to up the contrast. Ooh! Oh! Brightness and contrast, you beautiful son of a gun. It looks so much better with more contrast. You guys, if your drawing looks blurry, just use the brightness and contrast. Play around with the contrast, it makes so much difference. Hope you guys enjoy today's study on muscles and anatomy. You do follow along with my studies, right? If you don't, well, I hope you enjoy it regardless. I'm going to continue shading the complicated back muscles of Al-Haytham. This is harder than I thought, so I'm going to scream from a distance, just out of your earshot.